Everybody's got a price, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a pod, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price.
What's up, everybody? It's Marcus D'Angelo, and we are back for another episode of Everybody's Got a Pod. And of course, I am joined by none other than the $1 million man himself, Hall of Famer Ted DiBiase. Ted, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, Marcus. How are you today?
I'm doing well, man. You know, today, as we are recording, it's July 2nd, which means it's my wedding anniversary. My wife and I have been married for 8 years today. But there's another anniversary today that's a little bit less happy, unless, you know, depends on how we look at it and cover it today. Today marks the 55-year anniversary of the passing of your father, Iron Mike DiBiase. And so I thought, man, what better time than to cover your father and his career and your relationship with him, right?
Well, I appreciate that, Marcus. You know, and you know, it's kind of like now whenever you have a wedding anniversary, you're going to be, oh, yeah, this is the day, you know, Ted's dad died. So,
well, look, I don't mind sharing the day with such a remarkable, unique character as your father, a guy that did so many wonderful things in wrestling and for you personally. So I think it's great that we're going to be able to celebrate him and his life and career today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely, man. And look, it's you know, it's one of those things I told you before we started recording. We kind of have to fly by the seat of our pants with a lot of it because a lot of the research doesn't necessarily exist. You know, your father started wrestling in something like the late 40s and into the 50s and 60s, of course. So like finding the information is a little catch as catch can. So a lot of it's going to be shooting from the hip today.
Okay, I can tell you this. I think he was still in the Navy. I mean, we were talking about World War II, right?
Yes, sir.
And that was 45, and I was born nine years later in 1954.
Mm-hmm.
And but again, you're talking about my dad. Yeah, my dad. Just a little background. Okay, my mother was married three times. She got married the first time when she was married, like 17 or 18 years old. But the thing about that was that my mother she was extremely smart. I mean, and they kept advancing her like in grade, like from 5th grade to 6th grade to 7th grade, whatever. I mean, she was smarter than everybody, it seemed. And plus, you know, she also matured that way. And I'm not sure how she met, this wrestler, but his name was Al Galinto. And I think they called him Spider-Man, Al Galinto. And that was my mom's first husband. Mm-hmm. And my oldest brother was a product of that marriage. My older brother, by the way, is also extremely smart. He's got a near genius IQ, and you know, I mean, taught college level mathematics and has a master's degree in psychology and just all that stuff. But my dad, my biological father, was Ted Wills, and I'm not sure what year, you know, he was born. But I mean, I know that there was almost 9 years difference in our age. In other words, you know, I don't know when he was. Maybe when he was 20, I would have been 11? Is that about like 9 years?
Yep.
And so anyway, but my mother's second marriage was to my biological father. My biological father's name was Ted Wills, and Ted was a professional singer. And one of my earliest memories of him was, I think he came and got me, took me to L.A., for a visit, from Arizona. And so, and I was very young, but this is crazy what you remember. I remember that the show that he was on was called the Tennessee Ernie Ford Show. Tennessee Ernie Ford, I guess, was a very famous entertainer in that era, and this show was his show. So my dad was a singer on that show, and my dad had a beautiful, deep bass voice. A lot of times people talk to me about, oh gosh, Ted, you could, you should be in, whatever. What do you talk when they
like a baritone singer and like a
well, not like a singer, but like doing the narrative for cartoon movies and stuff like.
Oh yeah, you would be great at that.
And but I don't know. And anyway, but the bottom line is, I have a deep voice, but I couldn't carry a tune if it had handles on it. I definitely didn't get that gift. But anyway, when I was 5, okay, my parents, my mother and my dad divorced, I think when I was 2. And my mother told me later, she goes, I didn't divorce your dad because he was a bad guy. He says, your dad's a very nice guy. She said, but he had so much talent and no ambition. It's almost like he went out to Hollywood and he was just kind of like waiting for it to drop in his lap.
Mm.
And he says, and especially in Hollywood, whether you're a singer, a dancer, or actor, or whatever, you got to chase it. And she said, that's what she couldn't deal with. Women, security is a big issue. And so they divorced, I believe, when I was 2. And so from 2 to the age 5, I go to Wilcox, Arizona, this little town down in the southeast corner of the state of Arizona, 80 miles southeast of Tucson. And this is where my grandmother, my mother's mother, had a truck stop. She also had lived in Nebraska. I mean, she had a cafe in Nebraska, and I believe she got there because her husband, which would have been my grandfather, his name was Edgar Nevins, and he had been an engineer for the Union Pacific Railroad. And, when he retired, my grandmother just kept working. And she had a cafe, in Omaha, Nebraska. And so when my mother meets Mike DiBiase, they find out that they basically went to the same grade school, probably obviously at different times. But, but my dad figured it out, and he said, I probably delivered papers to your house, which is, that was pretty funny. And
incredible.
And how did Mike DiBiase and my mother meet? Well, not only was my father a wrestler, my mother was a lady wrestler. And I think we could probably find a picture of her somewhere.
Oh yeah.
And she was a beautiful gal. And so from the age of 5 until I was 15, which is how old I was when my dad had a heart attack, died, we kind of traveled, because wrestling was very regional back then. I can remember I went to kindergarten in Wilcox, Arizona. So now as I'm turning 6, my mother married Mike DiBiase I think in October of '59. Anyway, so I go to first grade in Portland, Oregon. Well, Portland was headquarters for our then wrestling territory. So I went to first grade there, then turned around to go all the way down to Houston, Texas. And I went to second grade in Houston, Texas. And then went back to Arizona briefly. And I went to third grade there. And then we go back to Nebraska, and I went the fourth grade and the fifth grade in Omaha, Nebraska. And then we went back to Texas, Amarillo, Texas. And I went to the sixth grade in Amarillo. Then we went back to Nebraska, and I went to seventh, eighth, and ninth grade in Omaha, Nebraska. Again, my dad, was still wrestling. I mean, we were living in the house that he had owned. I mean, he had been previously married, owned the house, and we lived in that same house. But he was wrestling at that time for this other territory, a Kansas City territory. Kansas City's, a couple hundred miles from Omaha. Anyway, that's just a little background. And so I go to seventh, eighth, and ninth grade in Omaha. My freshman year of high school, I went to an all-boy Catholic school, and they called it Omaha Creighton Prep. And all of the teachers at the school were Jesuit priests. Jesuit priests are like drill instructors. And it was an all-boy school, and I had to pass a test to find out, if I was eligible, to go there. And fortunately I was. And again, they also had some of the best records in high school sports because, there weren't any girls there, and so after my freshman year, high school, ninth grade, we go back to Texas. And what my dad thought was, he said, this was his thought, and he told me this, he says, you've got some talent. And he said, so we're going to go back to Amarillo, a place where I've always made good money. And we're going to get you in a good Texas high school football program. High school football in Texas is famous. Mm-hmm. There are high schools in Texas that, their football field is like a miniature stadium. And so Texas has always been, yeah. And so we're getting you in one of those programs and see how it goes. So we go back to Amarillo. Again, my dad and the Funk family, very close. And so we're there for the summer of '69. And we had only been there, Marcus, for 2 months. And my dad has a heart attack in the ring during a match, July 2nd, 1969, and dies. I mean, everybody was in shock. This is a guy who had been had won the AAU National Heavyweight Wrestling title in amateur wrestling in 1946. Mm-hmm. And he had played football and wrestled at Nebraska, graduated from Nebraska with a degree in education. And he just was, and again, having grown up in Omaha, the notoriety. If you were a follower of sports in Nebraska, you were gonna know who my dad was, and this is before he did any professional wrestling. And so I'm not sure just how he stepped into professional wrestling, but I know that he married my mother in October of '59, and they were married 10 years. And in those 10 years, again, first grade, Portland, Oregon; second grade, Houston, Texas; third grade, Arizona; fourth grade, back to Omaha; fourth and fifth grade in Omaha; back to Texas for sixth grade, and then back to Omaha for seventh, eighth, and ninth grade. And this is a lot of moving around, but that was the nature of the beast back then. Mm-hmm. And in reality, my dad wanted to get out of wrestling. And at one point there, while we were back in Nebraska, through one of his friends, he became part owner in a nightclub, and that didn't work out. And so it's back to wrestling. And so he told me, he says, "We're going to go back to Texas. I'm going to put you in a good Texas high school football program, have a great relationship with the Funks. And when you graduate from high school, hopefully, you'll have a scholarship going somewhere. And then I will retire." And so, but he never got the opportunity to retire because he had a heart attack and died on July the 2nd, 1969. And in Lubbock, Texas, as a result of a match. Autopsy showed, they called it arterial sclerosis, hardening of the arteries. They don't know, they didn't know back then a lot about what they know now. And again, I guess they said that there's two major arteries to your heart. One of those arteries in my dad's heart was almost totally shut off. But he said the passageway for blood was the size of a pinhole. You're not getting much blood. And so he has this heart attack, and he had mentioned to my mom a little bit that he felt disoriented a little bit one night. I know that we had gone somewhere to eat, and he backed out and clipped a car. He never did that, so there were signs, but we just never picked up on the signs. And apparently he had a conversation with a doctor in Nebraska who told him you need to quit, but he felt like he couldn't quit yet, and he didn't tell anybody. And so, he dies in Lubbock, and we all go back to Arizona.
Your father, such a great athlete, an accomplished amateur athlete, and now he's getting into the world of pro wrestling, and he's with your mother, who's a wrestler, of course. And it makes me curious, Ted, you as a kid, it's obviously you're probably going to the shows, you're hearing about wrestling all the time and stuff. How well did you understand what your father and mother were doing for a living?
Well, again, when my mother married Mike DiBiase, that was it. She wasn't wrestling anymore, and she became a stay-at-home mother.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, how well did you know what Mike was doing for a living?
Oh gosh, I mean, when I first met him, I knew from the beginning, there were because of the trying to think now. I knew that my mother had, because I can remember her telling me at a wrestling show where I was there, and and she didn't, it wasn't like I wasn't at wrestling shows all the time, because there was always somebody to take care of me, look after me. Anyway, I remember her telling me, no matter what you see, you stay in your seat. Don't you dare come to this ring. Well, I start watching this match, and that's my mom, that somebody's beating her up. And I go running down to the ring, and somebody snatched me and got me back, but I was there long enough for her to see me. Oh my gosh. Oh man, did she light into me when she says, "What did I tell you? I told you don't get out of your seat. You stay right where you are. And then you come running up there. And I said, Mom, you were getting beat up. Anyway, I finally figured it out.
Okay, let's take a minute to discuss our fantastic sponsor that is changing the lives of men everywhere. Of course, we are talking about Blue Chew. Are you ready to perform with the confidence of the $1 million man in the bedroom? Are you ready to leave your partner feeling like $1 million bucks? Are you ready to get that thing so hard you can go hunting with it? If the answer to all those questions is yes, it's time for you to give Blue Chew a try. Blue Chew can help increase your performance and regain that old confidence where it counts the very most. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable tablets and at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night, so that you can plan ahead or be ready when that opportunity springs up. The process is simple. Sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part of it, it's all done online. You can forget about those visits to the doctor's office, no more weird, awkward, uncomfortable conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy anymore. It comes right to you. Blue Chew's tablets are made right here in the USA and prepared and shipped direct to your door in a discreet package. But you know the drill, guys. There's not going to be anything discreet about your package. Men everywhere have never been more excited to see their mail carrier arrive, because when your package arrives, your package arrives. Listen, I know what your next question is. Will it actually work? Why don't you try it for free and find out for yourself? Something free from the $1 million man? That's right. You can try it right now for free. All you have to do is pay $5 shipping. That's it. Place your order now and give your partner a very pleasant surprise. Women are attracted to confidence, and Blue Chew can help give you confidence where it counts. Don't wait any longer. Time to chew it and do it. Take advantage of our special deal. Again, you can try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code EGAP at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com, promo code EGAP, and receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring Everybody's Got a Pod. You know, Mike, old school guy, Italian upbringing, and certainly an old school wrestling mindset. Was he one to openly talk about the business at home, like around the dinner table? Was that something that would come up a lot?
No.
You never heard about it?
No, because it was like that. We're talking about the days of serious kayfabe.
Okay.
And, all we were ever told was, no matter who you see here, you didn't see anybody. We would have people over to the house, and again, but they would, it was kind of like if they had a party at our house, they waited till it got dark, and they invite the, and so it was just the way it was then. Is just to try to always protect the business, and that's just the way it was.
Now, your dad was a heel, though. At least according to my research, he was largely a heel throughout his career. So, you as a kid, I'm sure you're watching him on TV. It's kind of like you sort of know the business, but here's your dad being a heel on TV and this antagonist. Like, was it weird for you to kind of come to terms with the idea that this loving father of yours was out there, beating people up and being this antagonist?
No. It's just kind of like, it's kind of like, I don't care who you are, but he's my dad. I never let that bother me. And what was funny is like, you never asked any questions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that my dad, he looked at it as like, the longer he's around it and the more he sees, he'll figure it out on his own, and I won't even have to tell him. And that's exactly what happened. It's like I figured it out on my own. That's that it was indeed prearranged.
So probably a big part of that is you mentioned that your parents would have parties and bring people over after dark. So I'm sure it's like, your dad's a heel. I'm sure that some of the guys coming over are baby faces. So I'm sure you're sitting there like, wait a minute, didn't Dad just fight this guy?
one of the longest pro wrestling matches in history was my dad and Funk Senior, a 3 hour and 20-minute Texas death match. And that was the summer of '66. And I mean, the Funk family have been, I mean, if I were to have, I could have been an adopted Funk. I mean, my dad and Funk Senior, I mean, every time even if we were going like from Nebraska, cross country and went out to Arizona, well, we stopped at that. Every time we went that way, we would actually go out of our way to go through Amarillo and stop and see the Funks. And we stayed at the ranch where Dory Funk Sr. had a ranch. And of course, that's easy because, you're not hiding from anybody then, because there's, I do remember one time when, I don't know, somebody came over unexpected, and my dad and Senior, like just started getting like, cussing each other and whatever. And he's going, get out of my house. And, I mean, they're just trying to protect the business because these people showed up, unexpectedly, and then, they leave, and we. It was what was funny is that my younger brother John was still basically a toddler, so we left. We left him there. We got halfway down the road going out, the road going from the ranch out to the highway. Had to turn around and go back. And the mother had to go in there and says, "Give me my son."
That's great, man. So it's a little strange for you. I'm sure that's kind of how you learn, though. It's like he's actually really good friends with Dory Funk Sr. But on TV, they hate each other.
And again, what they would say to us, is say, listen, it's kind of like, like business is business. And he says, we are good friends, but once we step into that ring, then it's all business. And, that's how we understood it. It's kind of like, they're friends. They're friends as long as they're not in the ring. So.
Now, it makes me curious, Ted, what other wrestlers do you recall? I know I'm asking you to reach way, way back, 45 or 55 plus years, but like what other wrestlers from, the territory days when your dad was out working, do you recall coming over to the house? Any like big names stand out for you?
Oh my gosh. Big names of that era, I mean, there was a guy named Bob Geigel. Bob Geigel eventually was the promoter of the Kansas City territory.
Mm-hmm.
A very young Harley Race.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, it was Harley Race who
tried to resuscitate your father.
Tried to resuscitate my dad. And he came over and that night when they came to tell us, my mother was just hysterical. I remember that. And we didn't even stay at our apartment. We went over and stayed with this other family. And the guy's his wrestling name was Jack Kane. He had been like my dad's manager one time, but his wife and my mother got to be good friends. And so we stayed at their house for a few days. And, it was just, what's really funny is the things I remember is like, there was a grocery store real close. And so they sent me to the grocery store to get milk or something. And the wrestling card in the window, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The wrestling card in the window says July 3rd, Amarillo Sports Arena, Iron Mike DiBiase versus Dory Funk Sr. I saw that and just fell out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough.
Ted, we've talked a number of times about your father's now famous, infamous match with Dory Funk Sr. that went 3 hours, 4 hours, however long it went. It was a really long, very well known Texas Death Match, which is probably his most famous bout. But are there other matches that you had witnessed of his that really stuck out for you?
Well, I didn't even witness that one. I
Ah,
mean, that was the deal. It's like, because I mean, he was a heel. And if I ever went to a wrestling show with him, he would set me down, and I was always going to be within like 20 or 30 feet of the dressing room door.
so you could get out in a hurry.
And he said, and he always told me that. He says, if anything happens and the people start getting crazy, he says, you just go in there and stay in there. So, and
Uh, So you weren't present for that Texas Death Match, but did any matches that he would have over the years stick out for you that you got to see?
oh gosh, that that's just funny. For having been his son that many years, I didn't. I mean, I saw a few TV matches and stuff, but um, and I knew he was the heel, and eventually it's kind of like I started figuring it out. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
never said anything. I never said anything to him. I never said anything to my mother. Who I went to was my older brother, who had one summer had made his summer job was he refereed. So I
Okay.
went to my older brother and I said, tell me, I said, this isn't real, is it? He says, you finally figured it out, huh, kid? Yeah. And then he also told me, he says, don't you dare tell mom or dad that I told you that because they'll kill me.
Boy, business well protected back then.
Yeah, it was.
Well, as I was doing some research, a few matches that your father would have did stick out for me, and I wanted to go over a couple of them for you here as we wrap up the show. He would wrestle Jake's father, Grizzly Smith, a great many times in tag team matches and singles. Did Grizz ever talk to you about working with your father?
I can't remember, but if he did, I think it would have had to been when when Grizz was a part of a tag team they called the Kentuckians.
That's the one thing that I saw was that he would work with a guy named Man Mountain Mike, I believe it was, or Mountain Mike, something
Yeah,
like that.
Mountain Mike,
Uh,
and the guy Man Mountain Mike is who he was wrestling the night he died.
that was one thing that really stuck out for me. But it's cool that here's you and Jake. You guys would end up having a WrestleMania match, and your fathers were wrestling each other decades earlier, which
Yeah,
is just an interesting footnote. Another name that stuck out for me is the legendary Danny Hodge, who your father would work with. Two legit amateur wrestlers, and they're meeting in the world of professional wrestling. I know that you got to know Danny Hodge a little bit. Did he ever talk to you about working with your father?
uh, I think so. I mean, I met Danny way back, like when I first went to work for Bill Watts. And it was Bill who basically told us just how good Danny Hodge was. And it's like if you looked at Danny Hodge, you wouldn't think he could bust a fly. I mean, little guy, not muscled up or anything else, but just let him grab your wrist or your hand and hold on. Because he could take a pair of pliers, brand new pair of pliers, and snap them.
Not a man to piss
He could
around
take,
with.
think about this: an apple, a firm apple, not one that the guys have done that where they fill the apple full of water or whatever and they just squish it, But a firm apple, take a firm apple and try to crush it. And Danny was known for his grip. Boy, he could do it. He could bring in a brand new pair of pliers and he could just snap them, break them.
If you guys haven't seen the videos, there are videos out there of Danny Hodge just pulping an apple in his hand and breaking these pliers and stuff. So I want to say that he had like double tendons or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
So it
yeah,
gave him remarkable grip strength.
yeah. That's what gave him such an advantage when he was wrestling in amateurs. Once he had a hold of you, he had a hold of you.
Yeah, how do you get away from that guy?
Yeah,
Did you know that your father also challenged Vern Gagne for the AWA title on several occasions?
Oh yeah, oh
I
yeah.
mean, that's a really interesting matchup.
And that's the other thing that's unique about that matchup is Vern Gagne and my dad also wrestled each other in college.
Oh wow. So
Yeah,
they amateur wrestled and then wrestled in the world of pro wrestling.
yeah. I think I think yeah. Uh, I don't think my dad won that one. Vern Gagne. I mean, Vern Gagne was like when we were in Omaha, Vern Gagne was like he would sell this stuff on TV like a vitamin or whatever, but he was but his territory was Minneapolis, but he would come down to Omaha from Minneapolis to wrestle, and he was like the world champion, and he was the AWA world champion, and he and my dad wrestled each other that way. And Vern and he, I think, also wrestled in college, and I think Vern won.
Wow. So I mean, with your father being an AAU national champion and Vern, defeating him, that tells you a lot about Vern and his skill level.
Yeah.
But again, cool like interconnectivity. You're part of our network here, One True Sport, but so is Vern Gagne's son, Greg Gagne. So it's just interesting that we keep getting all this crossover. Wrestling's a pretty small, interesting world, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's like a fraternity.
Yep. Well, the last one I wanted to talk to you about was, aside from the Texas Death Match with Funk Sr., Iron Mike was probably best known for challenging all-time boxing knockout king Archie Moore in MSG, and he would lose by stoppage in round 3. According to newspapers at the time, most of the people in attendance were wrestling fans who came to see the heelish Mike DiBiase get beaten up. Ted, how much do you know about this exhibition between a boxer and a wrestler?
When was it?
March 15th, 1963.
Wow.
I'll have to see if I can dig up this
newspaper. I have no. I didn't know that. I didn't know that till you just told me.
I was going to ask you about this because I was like, okay, is this a work? Is this a shoot? Like, it sounds like. So I was doing a lot of digging around. I actually found part of a newspaper article at the time, and it said that Archie Moore went to work on Mike's eye and he would end up winning by TKO. I think your father had his eyebrow split or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, this sounds like a shoot, but who knows?
You know what, buddy? I don't know. And that was that's the thing though. It's kind of like I would find it hard to believe unless my dad put on boxing gloves. Because I'm sorry, if you're boxing, it's all here. It's your fists, and you're gonna get hit in the gut and what have you and whatever. But it's right here. If you're a wrestler and you can grab a hold of somebody's body and take him to the ground, I mean, I'm sorry, I would much rather be a real wrestler than a boxer.
If it had been a wrestling exhibition, your father undoubtedly would have beaten the shit out of Archie Moore. I don't care if he's the all-time knockout king. Like it's a different world. But I have to imagine that with your father suffering a defeat here, a TKO, that it must have been your dad must have put on some boxing gloves and climbed in the ring with the, you know, one of the all-time great boxers. But yeah, just really kind of unique. You know, here's your dad. He's this famous, you know, amateur wrestler. Now he's made a name for himself in professional wrestling, and now he's stepping into the ring as a boxer. It's like it takes a hell of a man to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I can't imagine.
The all-time knockout king, and you got to step into the ring with this guy in his world and try to fight him. I mean, it's crazy. And the fact that your dad didn't get knocked out and only lost by technical knockout, I mean, that just speaks to his toughness.
Yeah.
So, man, just really cool. What a unique guy your father was, and I'm glad that we had the opportunity to honor him today on the podcast on the 55th anniversary of his passing.
I'm going to grab something here.
Oh, yeah, please. There he is.
This is him.
That's your dad. For those of you who are part of our listening audience, come over to YouTube. It's youtube.com/@everybody's-got-a-pod. You'll get a look at this image of Ted's father, Mike DiBiase. It looks like a promo photo from way back in the day. And it's a great one, man. Just like your father, a great man. And 55 years later, here you are singing his praises, you know, and he left this indelible mark on you after really only being in your life for 10 years. It speaks to him, not just as an athlete, not just as a performer, but really most importantly, as a man and as a father.
Yeah.
So, Ted, I appreciate you sharing the story with us today about Mike. You know, I like to think of it as kind of like the definitive version of the story of your dad, and yeah. I'm proud that we got to honor him like this today.
Well, thanks, Marcus, and you know, thanks for, you know, digging up some of that stuff. So.
Well, look, as always, we appreciate everybody tuning in with us this week. I do want to remind our listeners to get over to OneTrueSportTV.com and become a member. Again, there's 3 tiers of membership, $7.99 per month, $24.99 per month. But really what you want to do is become a traveling champion at just $39.99 per month. We just had Dustin Rhodes on for a Q&A. We've got another Q&A coming up. Those are exclusive for traveling champions. Not to mention bonus episodes and interactive experiences with guys like Ted, Jake, and so many more. So please do yourself a favor. At least go have a look. It's OneTrueSport.com. Get over there, become a member, and become part of our community. And also wanted to mention that if you want the latest merchandise for the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, Arn Anderson, Jake Roberts, Rob Van Dam, Greg Gagne, Magnum TA, so many more, you've got to go to OneTrueSport.com. That's where you're going to find all of the collections for each of these talents. And we've really captured that old school kind of Roots of Fight vibe with it. We just released that T-shirt of Ted. It's a face arranging by DiBiase after he broke poor Bullet Bob Armstrong's nose. We've revived that shirt, and it's back up on our website. And there's plenty more over there. Again, it's OneTrueSport.com. Get over there, find something for yourself, or if the wrestling fan in your life has got a birthday coming up, anniversary, some kind of a celebration, help them celebrate with some really cool, unique merchandise. And Ted, that is going to do it for us this week. Again, thank you, my friend, and I'll look forward to seeing you again next week.
All right, and as I go, I must remind you all that everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.
Catch you guys next time right here on Everybody's Got a Pod.
$1 million dream, tell them all good night. Everybody's got a pod, everybody's